What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Alfalfa podcast. Thanks for everyone joining us live on YouTube and in the chat. See a lot of friendly and familiar faces in there. If you're listening, maybe join on Wednesday at 6 p.m. PST. We're going to talk about AI.
5 p.m., Nick.
5 p.m. PST. Thank you, Stephen. Today, we're going to talk about AI attacking Hollywood. So this might be the first battle between humans and machines. So maybe we'll decide who's going to win. And then we're going to pose a little question that Eric's dad posed him, which is, do you have the responsibility, son, to help others that have less than you? It's an interesting question. We had a conversation we had after the last podcast, so we'll get into that.
Question.
And then also, back by popular demand, we're bringing back the Alfalfa round. So we heard some requests in the Discord, in the chat, so we're going to bring that back as well. Before we get into it, Armand, sir. What are we drinking today?
A fine assortment, a potpourri, if you will, of yeast.
A potpourri
beverages,
of yeast.
fermented
Wow.
yeast. Some beers. We got some Belgians. Apparently, Steven says this one is amazing, which I agree it is. St. Bernardus triple. We've got some a Chimay blonde. We've got a French Saison. One of the greatest IPAs of all time, Pliny the Elder, and maybe finish off with a little Japanese lager from Harlem Brewing.
Nice.
Little
Potpourri.
Little potpourri.
I went straight for the Pliny the Elder.
Charcuterie of
Wish I would have
beer.
started off a little lighter, but see how this goes.
I can't do it. I can't do the IPAs anymore.
I like
it's
the
like
idea.
I'm drinking a plant.
You're okay. You'll be fine. We don't need to get not this. The IPAs are the great divide. This debate has been had so many times in our Discord.
I used to like IPAs. I used to, when I moved
Until
to
you
San
realize
Diego.
they get shipped on a boat and meant to last like 300 years and all that.
No, that just made me like them even more, actually. I just got tired of drinking plants, honestly.
This,
they all tasted the same
This
to me.
Belgian
I just got
triple
over it.
kind of, it has that like sediment in it, kind of like a hazy IPA. I think that's why I like hazies, because I like these. These are really good.
Yeah, Belgians are great.
So I think Belgians are the highest quality, really, beer that you can get, and they get really, really good and really fancy. So I also wanted to just mix it up. We've been having a lot of liquor on the pod.
I'm so glad you brought a beer.
Yeah, and it's hot.
Summer day.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's quickly get into our sponsor, ZBiotics. So go to zbiotics.com/alfalfa. You guys have to try this. It's part of my pre-drinking routine now. It's saved me in the morning every time I've drinking it. I don't know about you guys, but ZBiotics is a pre-alcohol probiotic. So you drink it before you start drinking, and it works because your body produces this toxin called acetaldehyde. And
What?
yeah,
Nailed it.
acetaldehyde. I'm getting better. And ZBiotics produces an enzyme that breaks that toxin down, so you don't feel like shit in the morning. So I don't drink without it anymore. You guys have had the same experience, right?
I am
Can't
fully addicted to this stuff.
Can't do it.
Like,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
bad.
Not worth it.
I mean, we've
I would rather give up alcohol.
we've tried other stuff before. So if you guys trust us, try it out next time you're gonna go on a little drinking adventure. I think it'll definitely help. Like I've mentioned before, for the cost of another drink, you could potentially save your morning. So I don't know if you kind of find yourself, after a day of drinking, not be able to do the things you want to do, go to the gym, wake up on time, get the work done. ZBiotics is the way to go.
I honestly feel like this is the best alpha we've ever shared, is ZBiotics.
Well, it's funny because we've been using it before they were going to sponsor. So
Absolutely.
trust. Support the pod. Go to zbiotics.com/alfalfa. Use the code alfalfa to get the discount. And then let us know what you guys think in the Discord after you try it out. Love to hear your guys' thoughts. See if you guys had the same experience as we did.
Turn to
And
the chat
Jordan,
for a
you
moment.
spam the chat, I hope. Oh, you are?
Links
Yes.
are in the chat.
Very nice.
ZBiotics.com
And then if you could throw a
/alfalfa.
link in the Discord too, maybe spam the lounge channel as well. And then another fun way you guys want to get involved, you want to yell at Steven, make fun of me, yell back at Eric if he gets in one of those moods today. You can throw your comment up on the screen. So up on the live stream, you can throw up your comment. Go to streamlabs.com/alfalfapod. Use PayPal link, and any donation $9 or above, the comment gets on the screen. I don't know how emojis work.
Anything you want to say about Steven, just say it I'll read it.
Okay.
Especially if it has to do with the shorts he's wearing right now or his thigh tan. If you got any sort of commentary whatsoever, the chat is already on
Okay,
it.
this chat comment.
Chat is going off right now.
Basil, God damn it.
Yeah.
All right, so this really struck a nerve with me because when I woke up this morning and put on shorts at like 8 a.m., the first thought I had in my head was like,
My tan.
I need to not wear shorts on the podcast. Like, I don't want to be sitting around with my thighs all exposed. And I forgot to change into pants, and I got here, and I was like, oh, fuck, oh, fuck,
What's
oh,
wrong
fuck.
with shorts on the pod?
I don't know. Like, people
You
could see
feel
your
exposed?
junk, your thigh, like my milky
No.
white
Your only
thighs
problem
you know?
is that, when we're at the pool parties, all you got to do is you got to hike up the shorts a little more. Go a little more European.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, Ronaldo it. Pull them up, and then you'll be fine. Just get all the way up here.
Maybe we
and then
could
you'll
just
have a good
tilt that
thigh tan.
camera up a little bit
No, I think you're
more.
If I reach over, one thing I'm going to do is zoom in.
fine. Eric and I hike it up. You got to hike it up.
I mean, I don't have the quads of a god like
You got the
sir.
calves though.
I ain't
Yeah.
got, I
Don't
got
hold back
rectum-
on the
I
pod.
ain't got rectum quads, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get in the alfalfa round. So for those of you who haven't been, I guess, heard the alfalfa round, witnessed the alfalfa round, it's our little edges takes on what we've done in the last week that maybe provide us a little edge. Could be in money, could be in our perspective on
Used to be
life.
very money heavy.
Used to be
It
very
was a
money
part of the
focused,
money pod.
But there's a lot of life stuff, life
But
alfalfa.
yeah,
too.
we're broadening it.
And we're sort of working on a through line as well, right? Where it's not just the alfalfa round that is the alfalfa, but it's the show is
Yeah.
the alfalfa. And we try to do little bits of it in the beginning in the alfalfa round and then maybe do a deep dive on something and get really into the alfalfa and explore that. I think that's something we've heard repeatedly from people that they want.
So what category is your alfalfa, Armand?
Health.
Health.
Yes.
Hit me.
Hit you?
Yeah.
All right. I got a quick hit list here.
Here we go.
First up is you all need to get your asses to a Korean spa.
A Korean spa?
You could go Korean, you could go Turkish, you could go Russian, banya.
I see you as more of a Turkish spa guy.
Yeah, but we don't have the hammams here. We don't have the Mustafas to beat the shit out of you. And if you're not familiar with like the Turkish hammams, they beat the shit out of you.
My
and scrub you and-
massage guy is Turkish.
Oh.
He's like a ex bodybuilder
Rich.
Turkish guy. He is
So good.
so
Spa alpha.
jacked.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, he could break my thigh in half if he wanted to.
Really?
Nobody gets in there like this guy gets in there.
I mean,
I
just
love
imagine-
a subtle my massage guy. Like, you
Now,
got
just
him on
imagine
retainer.
how good would it be if he like gave you a body scrub in a Turkish hammam?
That I would not want.
Yeah, it would
Yeah,
just
no.
rip your skin off.
No.
So the reason this is my alfalfa is because this past weekend I went to a Korean spa. And first of all, if you're American and you're listening to this, watching this, the first thing I'll say to you is get your ass to a Korean spa because it will change your worldview. Like honestly, in a Korean spa, there's gender separated areas and everyone is naked. So this is already very uncomfortable for American people. American people are very repressed.
Just American people?
American people are very repressed compared to the rest of the world when it comes with nudity, when it comes with the body.
As we should be.
Why?
Wait, hang on. So you walk in,
What the
you walk
hell?
into the
What?
male area, and everyone's just in an open room, and everyone's just nude.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not normalizing that.
Okay. So
I
in a
think
Korean
America's
spa, no, I think that America's wrong in this regard. I think that what this does, this repression, causes like a counteract. Like it's very ironic. You know, we have this with alcohol, where kids are supposed to be completely away from alcohol until the age of 21. They get to 21, they go absolutely fucking bonkers with alcohol. It's just like real world, up some cake stands. In Europe, you have a glass of wine at dinner with your family when you're 14, 15, 16 years old. By the time you become, and then the alcohol age is like 18, you buy it, you drink it. It's not a big deal. Porn, same thing. It's on TV all the time.
It's on
in
like
Europe.
cable TV.
It's on TV all the time. Porn is this fascination in America that has become an addiction. Why? Same problem as alcohol. I believe that there's something interesting also happening with the body, with nudity. But that's not even the alfalfa. That was more like if we're peeling back the layers. Go to a Korean spa because you get access to hot tub, sauna, steam room, cold plunge for like 30, 40 bucks, depending on where you live. You get like an all-day experience. get like multiple rooms. There's like an ice room. There's a clay room. It's just like an effective, inexpensive way to just like reset your whole body. They got tea. They got everything. Then there is the sort of shared area, the co-ed area, where you can just relax in your little robe and just like, it's amazing.
So this
highly
sounds like a good
recommend.
value buy for me, like as a value investor. Hold on, you go in there for $40 and
Yeah.
you can just like hang.
Yeah, and so if you want to add like a service to it, you can. But
And-
you can just go for like,
okay.
there's the one in San Diego is like $40.
And you can go for like a dip in a pool or something for that.
Everything,
Or?
everything. So highly recommend. But you got to get
just
naked.
saw
I was
how-
going to invite you guys, but I don't know if you want to get naked with me. I don't think you do.
I don't want to get naked.
Yeah,
with
I knew
you,
that was
for the
coming. See,
record.
Mr. American. The other one is no dairy, no gluten.
You're on the kick.
Dude, been about 3 weeks now. I think I've been about 95%.
Wait, no gluten?
No dairy, no gluten.
Wait, what?
Fuck
Are
the
you-
leaky gut.
are
Get
you
off
not
the leaky
drinking the
gut.
beer?
No, don't worry about it. 95%. Leaky gut. The dairy, the inflammation. Dude, I feel better than I've ever felt. Honestly, think that there's a lot of people out there that have considered this and or are already intolerant or sensitive to it. Just give it a shot. Run the experiment for like a week. Watch how much better you feel with no dairy, no gluten. Highly recommend. And then lastly, in the mornings, every morning I walk my pup, I walk my dog. And one day, last week, I forgot my phone. It's like, why do I even take my phone in the first place, right? I forgot my phone and I wasn't trying to work and send off messages in the morning as I was walking him,
Wait,
and I was
you
just
work
present.
while you walk your
Bro, I'm
dog?
always working.
Oh,
I am
no.
always doing
That's-
something. Always. It's always an opportunity. Net time is like an opportunity. You're always listening to a podcast or something.
Yes, but
the same
that's just
shit. You're
back.
always
no,
doing something.
No, that's different.
No, but it's the same thing. Like always listening to something, always doing something is the same thing. Go for that walk with your dog or yourself that you normally take and leave the phone at home. And the alpha is like just generally find opportunities to put your phone down somewhere and completely walk away from it for an hour, for half an hour, for 10 minutes to start. Just watch what that does to you. It truly slows you down. You look up again. You make eye contact with people as you walk. You'll notice the ones that make eye contact versus the ones that don't. It's almost like your little secret, like, hey, you're not like plugged into the matrix. Me neither. So those are the things I really enjoyed this week.
That was a lot. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. I actually used to do this when I used to walk to work back when I had an office. It's like a 15-minute walk. And I got into a rhythm where I started walking in the morning and listening to like the same Odessa song every single day. No lyrics or something. So it was sort of like hypnotic in a way. It became like meditative. And I actually, I kind of identify with what you're saying because I would like feel the air and smell the urine on the sidewalk and just kind of see what was happening around me. It was kind of interesting to have like a point in your day where you start and you sort of are just observing the world and taking it in before you kind of
I have
go
the
into
same
your
thing.
like kind of autopilot mode and just
That's some alfalfa too, is like have a morning playlist. I've been building one on Spotify for the last 10 years. I have like a low tempo one and an up tempo one. And there's serious alpha with that. It is very hypnotic. You put yourself in a good state. Every day is a new day. And you don't always need information. I think we have an information overload problem for sure.
I need to
So-
do that again. My morning routine is at all-time lows right now. Like it's
Uh-oh.
never been worse.
Uh-oh.
Like I wake up, I
It's
turn
almost
over, I
intervention
grab
time.
my phone, and I check like index futures.
Steven,
First thing, I'm like
I've
in
been doing
bed,
this pod with you for
drawing
a while.
lines.
Steven, this is not good. I can see
I know.
I think it's great for Steven. I think it's exactly what Steven needs.
I can see a podcast coming where you say, I need to change
Okay,
this,
today
guys.
I took it to another level. I did something I've never done before. I connected my broker to TradingView in my phone, and I actually placed the trade in bed this morning when I woke up on my phone via like connecting my broker through the TradingView API. And as I did it, I felt like something was very wrong.
But part of you was like, wait, I just
I'm
optimized
gonna
my
have to leave my
productivity.
bed for the first 4 hours.
I did make money, which was great. I actually placed the trade. I got up, I fed my dog, took my dog outside, came back, trade was in money. I was like, that's good. But then I realized that may be some like bad reinforcement I'm working on there. So I should probably not
This is
do
amazing.
that. Yes, it is.
The
by
Chimay
way.
Green.
That's a good beer.
Saint-Cinquante. Wow.
You killed it with the beer. Thank you, sir.
I've never had this one. The guy at the bottle shop was like, where we used to go with Hoffman.
Yeah, that's right. So my alfalfa is money focused, and it does include making a trade from bed, actually. So Thursday after the pod last week, I bought some ETH. It was right before the Ripple announcement.
Ooh.
So it felt good that day.
Yeah.
But
You just
we
round
talked
tripped
about like 2 weeks ago how my probability of us going up from here did not equal, my portfolio. Like if I assigned like a 30-40% probability, I had not deployed 30 to 40% of my cash for that scenario. So I bought like, I don't know, 5% of the cash I have allocated just for ETH, just to get it in motion, click a
Nice.
button,
So
get the momentum
like
building.
is that like a trading allocation, or is that like a
Nah.
hodl?
That's the hodl.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think over the next like
And we felt good about that concept, right? Like whatever probability you assign is, I like it.
maybe. So I think I'm gonna try to push in another 30% over the next month or so. We'll see. But the real alfalfa I wanted to go over for today was you guys know I've been investing in these like limited partner apartment real estate. So we got our quarterly distributions. I love that day.
Payday.
Feels like another birthday. Got 5 of them a year. And the meat of it is that it looks like 2024 is going to be a pretty decent time to go in. So I took some notes for you guys just to like, here's where, things lie in like that asset class. But basically like fixed rate debt is the only guys surviving, still paying out distributions. All the floating rate guys are proper fucked, maybe holding on, not doing distributions, waiting to see how things go. There's a ton of supply coming online this year and next year. But because of March banking crisis, the banks shut down all these, like stopped giving out these construction loans. So you look at like 25, 26, there's no new supply of apartments scheduled to really come online. So that's also lining up. Single family homes still remain pretty high, expensive, both mortgage rates and the actual price of homes. So still good for apartment demand. They showed delinquencies were still pretty high over pre-COVID trends because there was like these restrictions, like you can't evict people during 2021, 22, but they're coming back down. Rent growth during 2021 was like 15 to 25%.
Yeah.
And now in the last 6 months, it started to like get back to the typical 3% a year average. A lot of the banks have scaled back lending. The institutions, some of these institutions, they hold tons of real estate in the portfolio. So they got a lot of commercial real estate. And so that's impaired. They can't sell those, but they need to provide like liquidity to fund redemptions. So they're selling profitable, high quality apartments at a loss because they need to come up with cash.
So is that what the supply coming online is that you're
the
saying?
supply is like new apartments coming online 23, 24. This is more of like, shit, I'm willing to get rid of some assets. So basically, last year there's been this really far bid-ask spread. Sellers not coming to terms with interest rates are higher now, and my property is not worth what it is. But slowly over time, they're getting pressed. So it looks like the maturities over the next 10 years for these like floating rate debts on apartments, they're concentrated over the next 2 years. So you give it some time, just based upon where interest rates are in the next 6 to 12, maybe 18 months, there's going to be some distressed sellers. And then the variable is like, do we get like unemployment higher? Because if unemployment comes higher, then rent growth is going to maybe go flat to potentially negative, and then you'll see even more deals coming up. But anyway, I thought I'd share a few notes on kind of what I learned from
Thank
the
you for sharing
distributions.
that. I wanted to follow up on that and
Yeah.
ask you if you, we talked about this briefly, but have you seen any conversions come across your desk, like former commercial office properties that are converting to residential because we have this like shortage of housing?
Yeah, I've seen outside of crypto Twitter, I have real estate Twitter. That's a part of my feed. And there's lots of talk about that, but I haven't seen anything really put into motion. I think it's pretty expensive to to gut it and convert.
Yeah. It's
But
too expensive.
Didn't you say yesterday there was like municipalities or states providing incentives for
Yeah,
developers to
so
do that?
I read this article from the Brookings Institute that was like kind of talking about the pros and cons or like the hardships that are involved with these conversions.
Is
But like,
Brookings like the left-wing think tank?
yeah, I don't know where it stands on the political spectrum, but I know it's like this like
It's a think tank.
high-profile
though,
think
right?
tank. But with this one, they were talking about primarily the economics of these conversions and like where different cities are in terms of demand for these. And they said that like cities that are growing, like Denver or like Boston, New York, like there's a shortage of housing, and that's what's causing, I guess, like rents to rise and like.
So they want in Manhattan to convert some of these commercial buildings.
Well, they do want those conversions to happen, but they said that the shortage is so dramatic that like conversions are barely going to move the needle.
Oh,
Like we
really?
actually need to build more like new builds.
I mean, as an investor, I don't like those deals because you have to wait a long time for cash flow. I mean, they got to like do the construction. There's not necessarily loans for those construction, and then they got to lease it up. So you're talking like 2 years,
Are
maybe.
you talking about the conversion or the new build?
both? Because it's
Both.
kind of a similar deal, right? They have to like lease it up from scratch.
But I was
So-
thinking about like zoom out from the investment standpoint. I was just thinking about like just for society at large, there are too many office buildings. Like there's too much square footage for office. I don't think that people are coming back the way that they previously were. And the Brookings Institute also mentioned this like inefficiency with like these like downtown areas like FIDI and SF. You know, like it's like 5 blocks on Market Street that are just skyscraper office that go ghost town for 2 days of the week. And they're like, this is like just inefficient allocation. Let's go mixed use. Like
2
mixed,
days of the week and the weekend.
well, 2 days a week. I meant Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, okay. Because they also don't come in every day. I thought
Well,
that's
yeah,
what you
yeah.
meant.
Sorry. Now they're not coming in sort of at all.
Yeah.
But like I meant the weekend. It's like programmed to be sort of inefficient. So what they were saying was like, they said in absolute terms, mixed use is better. Like it's a more efficient use of land.
No
And
question.
particularly for scarce land. They said like, why don't like let's say you have like a 35-story building that's cubicles. Like make the 35th story a bar where people can use it on the weekends. You can do it after work hours. Like, you know, make some of them apartments,
Restaurants. 27th floor for no reason. Why not?
I mean, I think like you'd want to be the investor in those like multifamily units in those areas where you build a whole community. I think developers are like the goats of like lifestyle. You know, you look at there's certain parts of San Diego where developers took over whole areas. There's one Mission Valley
Yeah.
in particular.
Dude,
Most
Mission
listeners
Valley's
won't know
gonna
it,
blow
but
up even more.
but they just put a ton of parks. They put a ton of businesses and then
Gotta buy
surrounded it in apartments, and it was really well thought out. And you could see like how an area was like, I don't know, kind of mediocre. Now you're like, wow.
Did you see the innovation district coming?
Yeah, they're building that on top of it. So the developers are kind of
the
like
what?
Innovation.
the designers of
Wait, what's that?
business district.
They want to blow. They want to turn San Diego into like a tech mecca, and they're investing a lot. And SDSU is extending their campus to it, so it's like an SDSU thing combined with a public thing. Huge parks, retail, innovation, technology,
It's such a
office
smart
space.
play. Like, we
If you
can
look at the
sit
pictures, you'll be
here,
like, "This is sick."
we could
And
just
it's right next to the stadium, the new
Capture
stadium.
all of the stupidity of like LA and San Francisco.
all- yeah.
It's just come here.
Bring all the stupidity.
Like we don't have like this massive glut
kidding,
of
by the way.
commercial office space here.
No.
Like I like our market is super different from San Francisco, and it's different from LA. And
I
like,
hope we don't become one of those that just attracts tech bros, though. Like completely. I hope it's a good quality innovation, and
yeah.
yeah.
I'm biased because
I just don't want it to become Austin. Like
Yeah.
that was a problem. But yeah.
I'll feel after I sell, I will share your sentiment.
There was,
I don't want to leave. That's the problem. I never want to leave here.
There was one last thing I wanted to ask you guys about. It's not money focused, but did
Okay.
you guys see this California reform of education?
You mentioned it.
So basically, they're replacing the existing standards, and what it seems like to me is they're lowering standards in progress of solving racial disparities. And so, really, what I read, and Steven, I think maybe you read this too, is like they're saying instead of doing Algebra 2, you can now take a data science class, and that satisfies your requirement to get into, say, a UC school. But what it feels like to me is that you're making the coursework a little easier so that more kids could get into college, which sounds great, right? But those kids are not going to be prepared if they cannot keep up with the coursework in college. And you're going to see, dropout rates increase, and those kids are going to drop out after probably saddling themselves a little student loan debt. And I don't know, it just seems to harm the people they're trying to help in the first place, not to mention some of these higher achievers who are like, yeah, I'm ready for Algebra 2 in the 8th grade or in early in high school. No, like Algebra for none, I think was one of the policies. And so you're hurting high performers, but then you're also hurting, the people that you're, marketing that you're going to help. I don't know if you guys saw this. You had any reactions to it?
I'd like question, like, let's break down a little more. Like, how is it hurting the high performer?
Well, because they're not necessarily letting them carry out like that progression. So let's say as a sophomore in high school,
on my way to Calculus 3.
Right. Those classes aren't not necessarily going to be available to you if you do that. And what sucks is that, let's say you're part of a rich family. If you don't get those advanced classes in public school, well, then they're just going to go hire tutors and get that for you, that challenge for you. But if you're not, if you're just part of an average family, you're kind of screwed from your tax dollars because they're not going to provide that like advancement. And so that's where it seems problematic to me. And it just seems like we've talked a lot about individualism and like collectivism. And it seems like what we started doing is kind of a lot of Thomas Sowell's type 2 discrimination, where you make judgments on groups. Like we're just like making these judgments based on groups. Okay, these minorities need help, because they can't do complicated math. And instead of saying, well, let's focus on the individual. If the individual needs help, we'll get them help. If the individual is high achieving, we'll let them keep achieving.
Was this stated or was this inferred?
It's a whole.
It seems like it's
a whole program. It's like I forgot the exact name. 2023 mathematics. It's like 1,000-page. It's a big thing.
But is it very bluntly stated that the standards are being lowered and that this data science coursework is easier? No. That's where I think
it's not.
It's important to not get lost.
But data science is easier.
Well, the reason I asked that question first is because regardless of if it's easier, what's more important and more effective? So I actually think I have more questions, but I'm on the other side of this for now, where the way I look at this is the thing that is actually like, so to your point, Nick, like by the time you get to the university, it could negatively affect your coursework, but it could not if the continued coursework that you have is in data science. And then if you take that into the world and you want to be an applied artificial intelligence, or you want to be a data scientist, or you want to be in something in that realm, it's only actually going to benefit you having gone that track. And I think that what you ultimately end up with is like, most people laugh when they look back at their education and say algebra was the biggest waste of time. Like that's commonly the joke, is that like if I had been taking a relationship class or a tax class or an accounting class, how much more effective that would have been to algebra. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity
I feel
to
so
take something more
strongly against that, though.
I don't like the example you're using, because I think algebra is very important. But if you were to use like trigonometry or something, I think that would like stand.
Okay, let me add a little twist to this. So in the documents, it states it encourages teachers to sell math and data science as a way to analyze racial disparities in your life. So they're saying like, not only will this help certain minorities progress, but like let's package it up in a way to make math culturally relevant. Like why?
I mean, it gets worse.
Why?
Like I
find
think
a better carrot, man.
I don't know.
I think in the 2021 version of this, there was like language that talked about how, you should steer away kids from the idea that they're sort of like objective right or wrong answers, which in math is like really hurts my brain. Like there is this kind of, it's complicated to unpack because it's this like amalgamation of like, okay, we're trying to help people get ahead. We're also lowering these standards, but then also we're sort of Trojan horsing some social stuff
some
into
woke math in there.
math.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know.
happening,
It's
unfortunately, in
weird.
every department, and it's a tragedy.
Yes, but math is the
That's
most
the saddest,
egregious.
and maybe
you know?
science as well. It's almost as
But
egregious.
isn't the outcome
Social science is dead.
you want people who are, let's say, not higher up on the economic totem pole to get some of these STEM degrees, right? So they can go into these STEM fields, which pay higher, so they can have some economic upward mobility. That's what you want. And so
Absolutely.
any attempt to like lower the standards seems like you're just undercutting them in the long run, which is so that they can move upwards in life. And then part of me is like,
I'm just arguing, like, is it a lowering of standards or is it a redirection of outcome?
Ooh, I like that's where my head's going, because I don't think, like, if you zoom out of just this like math incident, like what I think about often is like, as like a finance professional, I think about like things that are applicable in our daily lives, like financial literacy, basic things that are not taught in schools. And I'm like, well, you have like a very limited allocation with which you can like teach curriculum. And is it best utilized right now? Like, are we wasting time on things like trigonometry or something that like isn't used by the common person in our day to day? I think absolutely we're wasting a lot of time in the classroom. And if you're allowed to sort of like step back and analyze it and reconfigure curriculum, I think that's a good thing.
I get a little suspicious when I'm like, was this part of like teachers unions bundling up? Like, yeah, let's make it easier for students to get admitted into college without thinking about their long-term economic prospects, so that, well, let's make our jobs a little easier, essentially.
You're
and
rightly
like
being
show some
skeptical
results.
that the social issues and what Stephen was just addressing has seeped its way into education. It has more than seeped, and it is verifiable that most of the policy and most of the decisions that we've seen are not coming from like objective places of, you know, outcome based, you know, how do we create equality of opportunity, but rather we've got to force the issue, and we've also got to signal that we're doing the right thing for the right people. And that is what has bastardized and ruined and tarnished science and mathematics. And I mean that broadly speaking, like overall, like most of academia is going through a terrible, terrible time. It's almost impossible to escape what Stephen was describing at this point. And that's sad.
You know what they're doing is they're you know, like teaching to the test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like, so for them, like the grade is how many minority kids get into California public schools. And what they're doing is they're tweaking the curriculum so that more minorities get into the public schools
exactly
under
it.
the guise that, like, well, if there's this like common thing that gets thrown around where it's just like, oh, well, if you look at the end result and there's not like an exact distribution of races here, the conclusion you have to draw is that the system itself is racist. That's the only reason there's like a disparity. And then so to fix the disparity, we have to like tweak the system to just shovel more of XYZ like oppressed group into there. And then we get this outcome that is more equal statistically and, you know, problem solved. But as like Nick said, like if your end goal should be to have everybody in America have like an equal chance at like making like a good life, making a lot of money, having a great career, no matter what the color of your skin is, right? It shouldn't be, no, we just need to rubber stamp them with a college degree, because that's just going to keep creating more problems. Like if you just shovel people into college who are poorly educated, like down the road, that's just going to manifest itself in another social problem that you have to correct. And then you'll kind of crowbar some other program in there to fix the disparity, and then there'll be like another problem that manifests. So they're not like addressing like the end goal.
It's like
and
one short-term solution after another.
You brought up a great point. In there, you made a distinction between equal outcomes statistically versus equal chance. And I think that's the big difference where people get hung up when they say this word equity. I think they're implying equal outcomes. And I think Thomas Sowell just keeps coming back in my head. Like, there are rarely natural equal outcome distributions in, let's just call it nature. Like amongst humans, amongst, you know, anything, there are rarely equal outcomes, like a flat curve, not even a curve, just flat outcomes across the curve. And the best example of this is, and Stephen, you brought this up to us first, I think on one of those Wednesdays.
Like 2 years ago.
What's the book? Is it Discrimination, Disparities?
Discrimination and Disparities.
Yeah, by Thomas Sowell.
To be taught
And
in
I
every,
think he talks
every
about this
school.
within the first 2 chapters. And he goes through this example of if you take the same household with multiple children, so they have the same race, the same genes, the same economic, abilities, they have the same upbringing, they're literally under the same roof.
Right.
Even within there, you do not see equal outcomes. You see pretty wide disparities. In fact, the thing that is most determinant of who achieves most is, are you the first child or not?
So in many ways, what you're saying is like, no matter how hard you try to create the same opportunity and the same starting line, outcomes tend to take form in the way that they inherently themselves often desire.
Because there's thousands of variables and they're incredibly complex. So anytime I hear a scheme that says we're going to produce equal outcomes, my little spidey sense gets up and I get a little nervous that, like, while you can easily and dramatically proclaim that, like, this will solve this problem, and maybe it feels convenient, maybe it feels nice to even say that and to produce that plan, in reality, it's likely not to work. And you should ask yourself, can we even produce, is that even possible to produce equal outcomes in the first place? And so when you
Yeah.
see that attempt, I
that
get a little
was-
nervous.
That was the moment for me, like reading that changed a lot for me. Like where I went from someone who was really fighting for this ideology of equality and equity at all costs and thinking that fighting for equality of outcome was still justified, to realizing not only justification aside, that it was just broken and was never going to work at all. It just does not work unless you force it and you bludger it. You can try, and then what you have to do is get violent. You have to get violent in order to create equality. It's the only path.
And there are costs.
there are costs.
And we
my
don't
friend.
acknowledge the costs and trade-offs
Yes.
often. Anyway, I hijacked Alfalfa around. Sorry
No,
about
it
that.
was good.
No, you
little
didn't. Well, this topic is like near
reminder.
and dear to my heart because, like, I feel like when you do this, right? Like, who do you hurt? You don't hurt the rich kids. Like, if you fuck up the school system, they just go to private school or they get tutors, right? The people you hurt are the kids who are like smart and hustling, but they don't have like a lot of means. And like Sowell, who you mentioned, he's written a lot of books on education. He has a lot of data that points that, like, when there's this idea that if you kind of pool the underachievers with the overachievers, then the overachievers like bring the underachievers up and it makes for like a better outcome. In reality, that doesn't happen. You drag down the overachievers who would have otherwise like escaped their thing, and nothing happens to the underachievers. So you're just kind of ruining it. And then the rich kids like opt out. Like, I grew up in a small town. I went to a small public school, and like I was in like the highest math, science stuff we had. I don't know if any of you guys took like the AB Calc exam, like
Yeah.
AP. I had to study on my own for like months to be able to take the AB exam, even though I was in the highest class in my entire, never mind like the BC, right?
I mean, that's how much harder it was than what you had access to.
Like I had maxed out my school.
Yeah.
Like I got like I was getting like 99s in my, I couldn't take like I couldn't even take the AP thing. And then when I went to college, I got into a very good school, and I wanted to go to school for engineering. And my first semester in college was like hell. Like the math, I was being like I couldn't even believe what was happening. Everybody was like 1 to 2 years ahead of me in math.
Interesting.
And it wasn't because I was like stupid. It was because like I never had an opportunity. Like I asked my mom to send me to like a private school with my cousin. She was like,
So funny.
"No, we don't have money."
It's so funny because
So
my
I
high
didn't do
school
that,
friends and
you
I
know?
say the opposite. We say that our high school was so much more difficult than our. Whoa, easy, buddy. Easy. Oh my God. He did not like that. That our high school was like. Please put it on.
Do put it
Please
on.
cut
Yeah,
camera
do
one.
put it on.
But that high school was that much harder than college. And he's crying. All right, that was good.
Joking on Yeah.
That's a good place to cut
We'll
that.
talk more about it in the future,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, Steven, alfalfa round, go.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Christopher. Christopher saying, yeah, thanks for bringing the alfalfa round back with non-financial stuff as well. Yeah, we have fun with this. We'll definitely keep it up. Okay.
You're up, buddy.
bud.
Oh my god.
You need a minute?
Sorry, I just inhaled Devel.
Do you need me to like entertain for a minute? Like I can, put my jorts on. I can
No,
rip
I
my
think
bottoms
I'm
off,
good.
Show some quad. Like, what do you need?
Whew. All right.
I've been working on the quads lately, by the way.
Your quads?
Yeah.
We love the
Air
quads.
squats. Following the Bogeman program.
All right. Have you guys heard of the movie Sound of Freedom?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay. So no, haven't even heard of it. Crazy. And but have you seen it?
No.
It's about sex slavery, child sex slavery.
Child.
Yeah, it's like a child trafficking
I'm out.
movie. I saw it last Friday, actually. It's like an unbelievable
Can't
movie.
handle stuff like that.
It's unbelievable. It was like I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but I've been checked out on Hollywood for it feels like years now. Like I can't even remember the last time like a movie came out and I was like, oh, I need to see this. It's just like the Avengers Part 19 and like we're remaking every single Disney movie
Top
with
Gun.
like real life actors and making it. Yes, Top Gun is the only good movie I feel like I've seen in the last 5 years. It's crazy. Anyway, this movie was awesome. And it had like all the elements of like Hollywood that I missed. It was well written. It relied on like acting and like the subtleties of like just like faces and dialogue, and it wasn't like overblown with like CGI, and it was so dramatic and good, and it was like heart wrenching and hard to watch, and it's like one of those movies where at the end like everybody like gets up and starts like applauding. I mean, this movie is like struck a nerve with a lot of people. Like I saw a 9:30 showing on a Friday, it completely sold out. Like just wasn't a.
Oh, this is like now, new, out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and like nobody it's like this weird thing where it's being suppressed in a way.
I had heard it's been like politicized, like right, left.
Yeah,
politicized.
which is funny to me because it's basically just
What the
it's
fuck
basically
is
just
it?
Taken, right? Like Taken was a
Oh,
movie
you're right.
about
Abduction.
abduction and like sex trafficking, except like it was kind of more John Wick style, and this is like more of like a drama thriller. But it's the same concept. But like it just like it was just blowing my mind that this thing has been so politicized, and a lot of people haven't even heard about it, and a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to see this because they're like, oh, this is like a QAnon movie.
It
or
doesn't blow my
something.
mind at all that it's been politicized.
It's so
Name
weird.
one thing that isn't. Not to go back to politics. Keep going.
But of all the things to politicize, like why would you politicize that? Like the Rolling Stone had a review of this movie, and I think
Things are politicized because they provide the context for what to think about something. I don't have to think.
I don't
That's
know.
why things are politicized, man. Everything I can just go, okay, what am I supposed to believe about that? What am I supposed
But
to
of,
think
of
about
all
that?
of all the stuff to not politicize, like
No, there's
child
there's
trafficking?
no window anymore outside of what can or cannot be politicized.
Ugh.
I don't know a
What was
single
the?
topic.
I want to hear the Rolling Stone title. I'm just curious. Or like, what was the headline?
yeah. So the headline for it was that like this movie is basically like a QAnon adjacent thriller for conspiracy-addled boomers.
Wow.
I think was the byline. And if you watch, there's nothing like at all about it. Is like a drama about this like FBI. It's a true story, by the way, or based heavily on a true story, which kind of blows my mind when you
Where
like
does it take
see
place?
this story. It takes place mostly in Colombia. It follows like an FBI agent named Tim Ballard, who's like catching a bunch of predators. But like one day, this guy asks him like, well, how many kids have you rescued? And he's like none. And he just has this crisis of like, what am I doing? I'm just like locking up perverts, but there's like millions of kids. And then like he finds this one boy and is able to rescue him. And he's like, please help my sister too, because they were like abducted together. And he goes on this crazy mission to Colombia to kind of like rescue this girl resigns from the FBI, and just a whole bunch of crazy stuff
Damn.
to do it. And it's like a really, it's really good. It's just like an old school good movie that just relies on writing and dialogue, and I don't know. It just
So
reminded
is your
me.
offer to you want us to watch this movie, or you want to understand why it's politicized?
So I think people should watch this movie, but then like the other thing I wanted to just ask you guys is like, do you feel like Hollywood just sucks now? Like it used to be good, but now it like kind of sucks. Like I remember always wanting to see movies and being like excited about them, and it just feels like everything
Depends
is
how you
kind of
define
drivel now.
Hollywood. I think that it just shifted into series.
Yeah, let's talk about like what's going on
I
in
think
like
they
theaters.
just
you know?
moved where the attention and money is.
Did like the COVID interrupt really have something to
Definitely.
do with that? Because I feel like
Oh yeah,
nobody goes to movies anymore.
Didn't
but
help.
they weren't able to make the movies.
Yeah,
Like,
2-year
for a
lag
long
on that
time.
too, right?
Yeah, and I think all the attention went to streaming platforms. Streaming platforms aren't making money, by the way. A really cool chart that we could pull up at some point about that. Like they don't profit.
But you're right that the shows are
The
amazing.
series are amazing, and all these like big name actors. I remember the first time that like a Matthew McConaughey or Matt Damon showed up in a series. You're like, what are you
Yeah.
doing here?
Yeah.
I thought you're a movie guy, but then they're all there now.
I had heard those
They're all there.
those actors would say like, well, the best writing is happening on
Yeah, what
on
is
shows
Salma
now.
Hayek doing on, Black Mirror? Like, they're all there. So I think Hollywood is fluid in that way. I don't think Hollywood is dead, personally. I think there's incredible creative production out there. It's just not consolidated and concentrated the way it used to be. And I think that it kind of like broke the old hierarchy and regime down. COVID broke everything. COVID has been so good in so many ways, actually, for so many people. Obviously, it was appalling the way it was handled, and so many people suffered, and so much that we could go on the negative side of it. But in so many ways, what we don't talk about enough is how good
How
COVID
much
was.
accelerated things? You mean
In
like
many
certain
ways, so
technological
many- I
trends,
mean,
or
yeah, that's one aspect of it. The other is that it was a truly reality shaking moment where people reconfigured their priorities about what they cared about, who they are. They rejiggered their identities, even people just changed.
Yeah.
Everyone changed to a certain degree. People got married, people got divorced, people had kids, people didn't have kids, people quit their jobs, people changed their careers. I mean, everything. It was truly like a glitch in the matrix kind of moment. So back to Hollywood,
I'm
I
not
think
buying
that there was
COVID as the
no,
excuse.
I didn't say
though.
COVID was the only reason, but what I was attempting to explain there is that COVID broke the old
Behavior model, yeah.
behavior
I
model,
agree.
the system, and the machine of Hollywood.
But don't you think-
I don't agree with that. I think Hollywood has been shit since like way before COVID, and COVID maybe was like the thing that just actually collapsed it. But like when did the female Ghostbusters movie come out?
you love this.
that was
That-
the catalyst for you.
That was, I mean, that was kind of a seminal moment though in like this
was
weird.
that the top?
That was like a seminal moment of this weird thing where like Hollywood started producing movies to kind of like irritate their fans, and then they used the irritation of their fans as like marketing for the movies. It's like, oh, why don't you like the female Ghostbusters? Are you sexist? And the fans were like, no, the movie sucks. And then they're like, sounds like you're sexist. And they did that with that movie, and it felt like that kind of kept becoming a thing. And then there's this trend where like they want to remake all the movies you love. Like they take like heroes you love, like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and then they re-release them, and then they make your heroes like shit. Like
I think there's an easier explanation for all this.
like it's just
the easier explanation is just the format improved. Like we all have like massive flat screen TVs in our house where we can binge watch shows. Like we used to like to get like a full story. You're gonna watch a trilogy of a movie that comes out over like an 8-year period.
Right.
You know, like we get to watch like that many hours of shows in one sitting with
Binging,
like
man.
like Cheetos all over your.
it's true that we have good
No,
content on
it
TV
is
though,
sometimes
but
these things. Yeah, you're right.
guys, like
dude.
we're able to find these gems of shows because like the volume of content produced is like 10x'd. But like the percentage, like think about the percentage of movie type stuff that was good in the 70s versus now. Like it probably went from like 70% to like 2%. like there's just like so much dribble.
And obviously
now,
the
you know?
volume is going to increase. I don't know if the quality is going to increase.
Yeah.
So can we get into this
Yeah.
AI?
Let's move on to the
Okay,
next
so
thing.
one of the topics we want to talk about, because I think we're all like think this is fascinating, is AI potentially attacking Hollywood. So I think to set the stage here, we have on one side the producers. We'll call them the capital, right? Producers always the capital that put together the movie, essentially. And then on the other side, you got what we'll call labor, which typically includes actors, directors, and screenwriters. So you have these two kind of like labor unions battling it out in an agreement, and it's specifically over generative AI. So the screenwriters are freaking out because these producers are saying, well, like, hey, maybe we'll have a large language model write the script, and then we'll bring you in to punch it up at the end. Or maybe we'll just finish your scripts that you didn't do, and or maybe we'll have AI generate the whole script. For actors, they're thinking about, hey, why don't we just scan your whole body one time, give us the full range of emotions in like, I don't know, a day's worth of work, and then we'll just use this indefinitely as many as we need for
Use you.
In movies,
Infinite variations
infinite
of you.
variations of you. So you could call background actors just gone. And as we'll talk about, there's a Black Mirror episode called Joan is Awful. We'll talk about that scenario in a bit. And then directors, like you don't have a director anymore. You probably have a project manager literally working with the developers and like just, putting this thing together. So I think this is interesting because this might be the first high profile humans versus robots thing. And Fran Drescher, I think she's head of the labor union for actors, and she came out and said, and is like, we are in jeopardy of being replaced by machines. And I guess they negotiate these things on 3-year agreements.
Yeah.
So think about how fast AI's sped up in the last 3 months. If they don't put a stand now, in 3 years, when they come to renegotiate this thing, I mean, they could be out of jobs. Think about how much technology can advance. So there's a bunch of different ways to go with this,
I just
but
got a fucking crazy idea.
I don't know. This whole topic is fascinating.
Oh, this is a crazy topic.
So I guess who's going to win?
Well,
And,
I feel
like, I'm
bad
also
for the
interested in,
AI
like-
because the AI doesn't quite really have a
feel
voice
bad
yet.
for the
Yeah,
AI?
it doesn't
Oh,
really. It can't even
God.
stand
Here
up for
we go.
itself. It doesn't have a
Says
voice.
the AI
That's
entrepreneur.
big.
No, but just
Wow, dude.
I'm trolling, but come on, it's not even a fair fight yet.
So is this like a little doomsday-ish, or is it real? Are screenwriters potentially gone in the next 3 years?
This is as real as it gets, brother. This shit is happening, and it's happening faster than anyone realizes.
So
we are
apparently
so unprepared for all of this.
on one of these, like, I don't know, TNT shows, like season
We're
4
so fucked.
of a
I gotta
TNT
go
show,
piss.
the actors and actresses were already saying they were doing these full body scans, and they didn't know what it was for.
Oh, so they like opted in just like
They
in
were
Black
just
Mirror.
like, yeah, sure, we'll do the scan, but they didn't say because maybe we'll just use your AI version of yourself in the next season and not have to necessarily pay you. And so I think what they're arguing for is consent and proper compensation for their IP. And
So like how you said 3 years here. That's like something you just mentioned.
yeah.
But like, right now AI is not capable of displacing actors because like if you were to show me 2 shows, one that's AI based and one that uses human actors that are good, like I would 10 times out of 10 choose the human actors. Like, you think in 3 years that the need would be eliminated for?
Well, I think
human
like
actors?
isn't there Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford's in it, and I guess I've never seen the movie, but I guess in it they have Harrison Ford, old man, and they also have young versions of Harrison Ford in there, and that was produced using AI. I saw another Netflix show, I think it was Netflix, called Otto with Tom Hanks.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, and they have a version of him that's younger, and I don't know if it was him acting it and they just CGI'd his face, but they made him look younger. So it's close enough to think like this is on the brink.
This is going to go in stages, right? So first, it's going to be the CGI, right? And we'll be like, oh, it's so great that we can just type at a keyboard and do the special effects. You
Yeah.
don't need to know all this like crazy special effects knowledge, to kind of do that, and that's great, right? And then it's going to be like, well, we get all these extras in movies, and nobody cares who they are anyway. People just give them parts as favors or whatever. They give them like one line maybe.
Yeah.
But mostly they're just like these kind of faceless masses in the background. So who cares if they're AI, right? And this is interesting too because we have like a friend of a friend who's like on like Netflix shows, and it's kind of like C-list Hollywood probably.
Yeah.
He's saying that they're like offering them like $200 to basically take their face and just
they're already getting this offer.
Yeah, to like use them as kind of extras and backgrounds and stuff like that.
I mean, that's an interesting point because like the distribution of success in Hollywood is very, like, I don't know, the very like top 0.1% is the successful one. The Matt Damons, the Brad Pitts, but the majority of Hollywood is these kind of like B-level, got a few lines, the background actors, and they're literally using those jobs to pay rent and get by while they try to hope to get themselves to the big leagues. And you can imagine how this could essentially wipe that out.
But imagine like even in this scenario that you're depicting with your friend who's like sold his likeness, like you still need, like, I think to get a compelling piece of art, you need to have that human element, like a voice behind it that has like the right tonal inflections that like portray what you're trying.
Wait, well,
like, the
let's
emotion.
follow this down the rabbit hole, because I think everybody's like CGI, whatever. We'll do all the CGI with AI. Who cares, right?
What do
And
you
then
mean,
we're
like-
like, okay, background people, sure, we'll do them with AI. Who cares? And then we start getting to like the leads, and it's like, okay, let's say we don't want to replace the entire lead with a completely made up. What if it's the next iteration is Harrison Ford, but he's acting, and then we're making him young Harrison Ford.
So
Now
it's-
you're like,
yeah.
okay, that's still kind of cool.
It's like augmented
Harrison
reality.
Ford still gets to make movies as like Han Solo, like OG. That's kind of cool, right? But then Harrison Ford dies, but he's uploaded his stuff into the scanner, and then we keep making Harrison Ford movies, and he's licensed it, and we're like, okay, it's a little weird now, but at least I keep getting to see Han Solo. I keep getting to see like Tom Cruise do Mission Impossible. Maybe that's not okay. Maybe that's okay. But then it starts getting like weird, like, because I think at some point we just start inventing people from scratch.
Right.
We've already established that humans are we're cool with cartoon characters, right? And we have this thing called like the uncanny valley, right? Where we're okay with like cartoons. And then when we have these like representations that are almost human-like, but they're like not quite, we like hate them. Like, do you remember that like Battle Angel movie that came out? Probably not, because nobody saw it, but it was like, or like the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Like, there were just memes. Like, it was like a horror show where something is like AI and it's like CGI and it's so good, but it's not really. It's like almost human, but it's not, and we hate it. But what about when it gets to the point where like it's just indistinguishable whether or not it's a human? Like, do we
Not
just
even
start
that.
making stars from scratch?
That was the reason I had to get up. Like, we're such human maximalists because we have to be, but what we don't even begin to consider is that AI will create better, more entertaining versions of humans than we could ever even possibly begin to do from a human level. Like a Leonardo DiCaprio.
Someone just said in the
Someone
chat,
liked that movie.
Pat's in the chat. Hey man, I liked Battle Angel.
So like
Alita, Battle
people
Angel,
love
that was
Matthew
it.
McConaughey, Leonardo DiCaprio, Scarlett Johansson, Margot Robbie. Like, we're gonna get better versions of them, and Hollywood is fighting against this, saying if we don't win this battle, we will be eradicated. But whether you win this battle or not, AI as a creative entity, without creating a derivative of your name or likeness or work or your past behaviors, will be able to generate a version that is different enough, that is an amalgamation of all these different great actors to create the new Leonardo DiCaprio 2.0 that doesn't look like him but looks better, doesn't act like him but acts better. And people, human beings, will likely fall in love with these actors,
Yeah.
these AI
Wait,
actors.
I think we missed a step actually, because before we actually just create actors from scratch, which I think we will do,
Well,
I think
100%.
there'll be a point in time where we still have humans being actors. But like imagine somebody who is like tremendously talented, creative, funny, but they're not like, they don't have the look. They don't have the look of an actor, right? But through AI, they can create a completely digital persona where all their content they produce is like online, and they produce it. Like, it's like, imagine it's somebody who's like, I don't know, they're just not something to look at. And we like pretty women. But so imagine it's like some woman who's like a brilliant actor, is funny and everything, and she just uses AI to turn herself into a character. It's still her. She's saying the words, she's coming up with the stuff, but like on the screen, she's a different person. And then she uses that also in social media, has a whole social media following, does that. So it's this kind of bridge
that's a very
between the
optimistic
two.
way of looking at it, to assume that that base human is even needed. I think that's
Well,
nice.
I might
But it's
agree with you that
actually
it's not
not.
needed, but it's like the first step.
Yeah.
I kind of agree
Sorry,
with you.
you're
That
right.
I think in the
That's
future
next
we
step,
don't
and then
care.
Fine, we get that step, but that step's going to go by so
Yeah.
fast, and then it's going to be like, okay, we didn't even need that.
Like,
step.
I think your daughter grows up falling in love with a movie star that's completely made up.
Yeah.
Doesn't even exist.
And
Some of them will be physical entities like robots with personas, but most of them will be completely digital entities.
And like the version that you get will be different than the version that Eric and
Bingo.
I get,
Oh,
because
it's
like
curated.
they'll know what we like to click on, what
yeah,
we watch,
don't
our view
love
through rate.
Leonardo DiCaprio. We love
Eldris
our
Alba.
creative mind's version of what the greatest actor is. That's a fun. This is where reality begins to fragment.
Well, I just think it's like the work gets commoditized a little bit, the cost goes down, and so the
You went financial and I went metaphysical. Like the most stark contrast. I'm like, I just went to outer space, and then you just went.
yeah,
full.
but like
I
you know
love that.
the marginal cost to produce another variation is like what, I don't know, a couple dollars, maybe pennies at that point.
So for the mainstream, I agree with you, but don't you think that it would go the way that like big agriculture commoditizes it, but then you have like small local farmers that people like pay up for? Like, I think
Yes.
that would be the case.
I think this is what's going to happen. And actually, Wakao or whoever in the chat commented on this earlier, something to the effect. I think the actors strike, the writer's strike is like interesting, and it's something we've seen over and over again throughout history, where you have this sort of entrenched group, like of interested economic actors who are just totally rugged by technology, and they sort of seek to preserve their standing, right? And ultimately, they always inevitably fail.
Right.
And I think that will be no different this time. And I think a large reason behind that will be because of just basic economics. Like I think that I think that he's right, that like a core problem is like so much of the content of Hollywood that is put out today is just like rote drivel. It may as well be written by an AI,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to eliminate this middle ground.
It's half
and
of
we're
1%
just gonna,
of actors that are really phenomenal.
yeah,
doing
like
deep
most
creative
of us
work.
just like when we watch like the Kardashians or whatever reality show or like whatever the next Marvel superhero movie is, we're watching this like basically programmatically generated content that is just designed to like poke our little buttons, and we go, oh, turn us into zombies, and we like take that in. And in the future, that just all gets produced by AI. We don't need the writers. But as you said, I think there becomes this desire still to like watch the craft movies, like the craft organic
It's a-
fair trade movies with real humans and real writers, and we just eliminate the middle.
Yeah,
So
bro,
Eric, are you
the
imagine like an
splitting.
organic label, like humans only label on the movie, and that like
100%.
yeah.
I could see it.
Yes.
So okay, so back to the
100%.
human level. I'm curious. Like, let's assume that you don't need screenwriters. You don't need 90% of the actors anymore. You may not need half the directors. On a human level, should we care that like all those jobs could be eliminated in the next 3 years, or is this the
We're
market
just
doing its thing?
facing one
I like what
market.
I like what you said, that this is like the first high-profile version of this like disruption.
This is the first market that's facing this problem in such a cataclysmic,
Very
sudden
existential
way.
to them.
Because it takes the acting, the voice, the writing, the directing. It eliminates a lot of things at once, right? The real question is, should we care? That's your question. Should we care? And then what's the next industry, and or what does it mean when this whole scenario plays out that we've discussed 100 times on this podcast, what will we do when there's nothing left to do? You know?
Yeah.
And what will we do when not that there's nothing left to do, that everything is being done for us better than ever before. We're more entertained. We're happier.
Whatever we
in
want,
that
my friend.
sense.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I want to know,
I mean-
at the same time, these, parts of the economy are going to collapse and others are going to grow, and the customer may benefit from it. But like, should we just disregard that purist free market attitude when?
Well, look,
parts
first of all,
the-
let's just take this one industry. Who gets paid? Who gets paid if these roles get replaced? Where does the money funnel?
I mean,
There has to be a creative studio still behind
No,
the
I don't
movie.
think there does have
Technology
to be.
company.
I think the
It's a
end goal
company.
is you have like single people. Like you could have like a 14-year-old who doesn't know anything about videography or
True.
editing or anything, and
True.
in their room they can just create like the next great like American movie.
Well, I think we'll see that in the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Where the
and
money
that's-
ultimately flows, my friend.
And then you're
And
like
video
removing a lot of
games.
gatekeepers in a way by doing that.
Yes.
But you are also
So the money
it's
flows
creative
to-
destruction.
to a company first, and then
Sure.
gets taxed, and then flows back to the people through UBI. Ultimately, I think this is where it ultimately flows.
But I also think this is
Yeah.
the creator economy that benefits. The individual can benefit,
Interesting.
right? That's what Steven's alluding to. It's like this idea that any individual can become the next Steven Spielberg is a real thing.
Yeah.
The next person that can create a video game that people fall in love with. My concern is more the fragmentation of reality. Like your product being desirable and available to a large number of people. I'm not so sure how that works out. I think you create a version of your product that is fully customizable and personalized based on that person, and then you reap the rewards for that. So what I'm trying to say is like you're creating the skeleton for the movie or the video game, but then you choose the journey experience. It's a choose your own adventure
Yeah,
experience.
the customer wins.
Yes, the customer wins. That money should ultimately funnel back to the creator. I think that people will fight for that. They'll fight for those rights of like, this was my creation, no matter how many derivatives of it you make, it's necessary. But I'm worried that it fragments so far that your version of what you're experiencing and my version of what I'm experiencing in terms of base reality is so different that we're no longer even able to connect and talk about the movie you watched last weekend. Like, what's the conversation we're having now? You're never going to go and watch my version of my movie because it's made for me.
I mean, it already happens. Like, did you see on Twitter this thing? And you're like, what are you talking about? You're like, no, it's huge. Like, there's like 1 million views on it. And you guys obviously didn't see it in your feed because you have a customized
I would just
feed.
press the button that says, AI, please talk to Armand about this.
But so is there, I don't know, these LLMs are trained off of real human written scripts, off of actors who produced, these movies, off of directors who directed them. And I don't think we have the answer to this, but like at some point they got to be paid for that IP, maybe, right? And if they were 1/100,000th of that training model, do they deserve something? Should the LLM be like legally required to shut down because they didn't get consent and proper compensation for that one bit of content?
I just
these are things that are gonna come
We're
up.
focused on movies, but I think this whole thing is the most futile battle ever.
I agree.
Ever.
So this Hollywood thing
nonsense.
in particular, this is just another example
It's
of
over.
of an industry getting disrupted by technology, which has happened throughout time.
It's
So
already over.
Who cares about this one in particular? But I like your existential kind of view on it, which is like, this is just the first domino that we're looking at.
If you care, think about domino number 10 and start to defend that domino and think about what it is as a species that we want to retain. This one is done. And the next one and the next one is done. It's over. Like, this stuff is done.
Well, to also focus on the financials, like we've talked
Sure.
about how like people adapt and then like UBI kicks in eventually or whatever. But then I think Steven, you talked about this before, where it's like rate of change matters. Like when all this hits at the same exact time to every industry at the same time, now so many people are displaced. That's
I
a
think we
problem.
need to be thinking about pausing, actually. And this is something we haven't brought up on the pod lately, ever since the pause letter went out. This shit is crazy, man. We really actually need to pause. We need to pause. We need to talk. We need to coordinate as a species. We need to get everyone to slow down, particularly the Western world needs to coordinate around what the laws are going to be, what we're going to do. This is the greatest existential threat that humanity has ever faced. And I don't think that we're taking it seriously enough at all.
It's
and I don't mean to be like a fear monger. I'm just serious. Like it's not a joke.
Yeah, like when all this stuff happens at one time, you have not one domino, but 10 dominoes fall within like even a 5-year period. I mean, we've seen this happen before where we took manufacturing from the U.S., we hollowed it out, and it went to China and India. And that lifted probably 1 billion people out of poverty. But there were maybe 30 million people in the U.S. who like suffered drastically, right, from this change. And so you might say, okay, on a global level, net positive, but then you put people in tribes, and that tribe was pissed the fuck off. And it caused some pretty heavy divisiveness in our society and culture.
Yeah.
And like, imagine that times like 10, you know, like whole tribes getting carved out, and it's not going to be pretty. But you might say net positive from standing back.
But I think of it more like I haven't seen this movie that's out now too, or maybe it's coming out, Oppenheimer, where like
Ooh,
where
next
there's
weekend,
like,
let's see it.
okay, we'll see it. But like I think the idea there was like you want to be first to that new tech because at least you're the good actor, you know? Like don't you want sort of the good guy of the US, the Western world, the people who are like we can trust to use this in sort of at least like a free market type of way to get there first? Like
Yeah, that's what we
you
tell
don't want to
everybody.
pause that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pause thing is like not gonna happen
Because you're not going to coordinate the whole
unrealistic.
world to pause.
Yeah,
I don't
it's-
know about but we don't need the whole world to pause. Like there's a question in the chat from Adam, like who's going to tell China to pause? We don't need China to pause. China's too far behind.
Why don't we need China to pause?
Too far behind. We need 6 to 12 months to just like get our shit together and coordinate.
The problem with pausing is it just
coordination-
creates such massive financial incentives for anybody who doesn't pause that like the market just makes it so inevitable that the pause won't happen.
Everything is built on the foundational models. It's the foundational models that are going to pause. Yesterday, Llama 2 launched, right? This is an open source model by Meta that you can build on commercially. Okay, for 6 months, startups get to build. Will startups adhere to the pause? Probably not. But the foundational models will. The GPT-4 will not, become GPT 4.5 or GPT-5 for 6 months. That allows Meta, OpenAI, Google, everyone to just slow down and talk to the government and coordinate what needs to happen next, because the types of stuff that
Yeah,
we're
the
going to have to
government knows
deal
what to do.
with is far beyond anything we can imagine.
We're okay because Kamala Harris is the czar of AI, so like we're all fine. We just
She
pause.
says it's
we-
2
Yeah,
letters.
we like
Are
Kamala
you
Harris.
guys are you guys sure that we're still in base reality? Like Kamala Harris is the fucking AI czar, then it might already be too late.
No, we're obviously being trolled. We're obviously
Yeah.
not in
Obviously
base
too
reality.
late.
Yeah,
This
what are we
is
even
ob- this is
arguing
obviously
about?
a
Then
giant
fuck it,
scam.
man. Let's drink more beer.
Yeah.
On like a serious note, like do you actually feel like a critical mass of this training data hasn't already just like escaped orbit?
Yeah,
like it
escape
actually
velocity.
could be. I feel like it's already happened. I'm not
That's fine.
I'm a bit of a layperson in this.
We just need
area, but-
the government
Oh,
to
God. No,
understand.
it's over.
No,
No, it's
listen.
over.
I know, but the price we pay for indifference is what we face today. Like we created our reality by, as a society, as Americans in particular, being indifferent to government policy. This is something I've always admired about you, Nick, is like you've always cared about this stuff before any of us ever did. And I think that the reason you cared about policy in particular is because you are adhering to that sort of old Plato quote of mine. Like, the price we pay for indifference is like the amount of like how much pressure do we want to live under? How much do we want to suffer as individuals? We don't want to suffer. We want to have a say in the world that we live in. So if we don't like what we see, we better do something about it, because these policymakers are going to decide, like when we're in outer space and we're intergalactic, it's still the government that makes the decisions for all of humanity. Like
Yeah.
we have to start to
What if it's the
engage
actors in
that
base
relation.
reality that make the decisions, and Nick never cared about policy? It's the actor underneath Nick who's actually making all the calls.
I mean,
So
I'm glad you brought this up because this kind of relates to the last thing we're going to talk about, and this doesn't have to be a segue.
Okay.
But there's a chasm between what you think should be done, given that the world is rational and everything works properly versus what you think should be done, given that you have to operate within the constraints of, say, like how government actually is.
I think about this all the time. Practical realism versus idealism.
I have to pee very badly, so I'm gonna leave you guys to
I can
discuss
continue.
that.
Go. Because,
Don't start the next topic without me.
I won't. So, but like when we do this,
Damn, those thighs are white.
but like, aren't we implicitly picking winners and losers? So like, there's a company who developed this technology that allows us to scan an actor and go to a producer and be like, listen, I just took your cost of goods sold down by 90%, and I just like very minimize your marginal cost of producing the next product. Like a very valuable service to a very large customer. And I don't know, are we like picking winners and losers in this economy? Should we let it just play out? I worry about, like, I like policy, but is this a place where policy should play? Because whenever you see a lot of policy, I don't know, housing and lending, like that's where you tend to see these big bubbles and big pops and swings. And so
You see more of that.
Like healthcare, all the shit where like the expenses are astronomical
Right,
is where
where
like,
the highest inflation, highest cost.
But do you guys feel that there needs to be any level of intervention, whatever you want to call that, policy intervention in this industry, in this technology? You have it's not even an industry; it's just a technology. It's like we just invented electricity. Should we get involved with who has access, how fast it evolves?
I mean, ultimately,
What
yes.
the grid looks like.
Ultimately, yes, but it's so nascent that we don't even understand what the policy should look like because we don't know what the future looks like. So it's like impossible to create policy on an unknown future.
Is it not more beneficial to at least strangle it and put it in my hand and
No,
allow it to evolve?
I think that's worse.
Okay, so it's worse to attempt to control it.
Yeah.
So if it's already out of the box,
I think you let it grow and then you sort of like trim, you prune around the edges.
what
you
if
don't
you
just
can't?
strangle.
What if it becomes so autonomous and has such agency that you cannot trim it? That's the conversation, bro. That's the reason that they want the pause. The pause is designed to prevent this thing from having full autonomy and agency and preventing it from being in the wild. It already has access to internet. It can already code. It's going to be able to do everything. Nothing can stop it past a certain point. So what happens at that point when you can't trim the hedges? Not only are there hedges, but those hedges come back and feed back on the original root and kill it.
I guess what,
there's
like-
real concern that it's going to kill its host.
Like every time I've heard of this like doomer AI take, I've always heard it spoken about in like these sort of like theoretical terms of like what if you know like then it comes back to the roots and kills the host, like, but I've never heard like the practical like here's the mechanism by which this happens and let me like walk you through all the steps in like a linear fashion. I've never heard it. Like I don't understand what you're protecting against because it's always this like big picture theory thing that
yeah, fair. One way, which is the way that's currently in front of our face, is like there's this idea that like AI and robots and that integration physically harm human beings, or with misinformation cause human beings to harm one another. I mean, like you've heard that, maybe not. So that misinformation, which we've already seen the impact of misinformation in society, look what it can do. It can cause us to jump in the streets and kill each other. It can cause war. It can cause famine. It can cause all kinds of things. Like famine is a real issue. It getting control of like any of our grids of communication or production is like real issue. But there's this other version of it that only exists in the digital realm, which is like just taking Hollywood back to that conversation. Like if all it does is take away entire industries and leave nothing for humans to do, and those humans have not yet figured out how to find a means of production that increases output, increasing capital, increasing and flows back to the individuals, then what it's doing is it's just causing human beings to become obsolete. There's no need for them. So there's, I think, a physical version of it where there's fears of actual humans being attacked directly or indirectly, and there's just the version where there's no need for you anymore.
yeah.
And both of those are concerning and worth looking at.
I think the second one I'm least concerned with.
Okay.
Like the second one is has been happening a lot. You know, like when you like displace labor in certain industries, that
You just look at that as like technology.
technology is always sort of innovating.
Yeah.
The first one, you know what, like rang through my head was like David Hoffman's voice, like blockchain fixes this. Like when you can like identify originator, like source with like truth that is immutable, I think that becomes important.
It also might provide the robot agents a way to use money.
An attack vector.
Yeah, and maybe potential attack vector. I just imagine these like script writers getting the output from the AI, and the AI is like, punch this up, and they're essentially like the who's
Dude,
working for who
literally
in that
you have
scenario.
to like type in your code into a computer that the AI has full knowledge of. Like that sounds pretty fucking disastrous.
All right, well, Steven went to the bathroom and also
Are you back?
conveniently had enough time to grab a snack. It looked like, wow.
Are you
What
back?
did-
Did you
what
bring the
did you
Pliny
eat?
with you?
No.
Oh, go get the Pliny, please.
No, I think we
I
drank
thought
all
the
the Pliny.
Pliny
No, I
was
put one
here.
in the
We drank
fridge
it.
because I was like worried it was getting a little warm. I wanted to
Whatever
cool
I'm
it
drinking
down a
right
little
now
bit.
is
I wanted to cool it down.
All right.
incredibly
Caesar's on
warm.
it, savior of Rome.
Oh, the
Thank
savior
you,
of
Caesar.
Rome.
So let's transition a little bit. So last week after the pod, we went out to our favorite cigar place, had some drinks, and I left this conversation like right in the middle of it.
Oh, thank God, because I was like, was Nick there?
So I don't know, Eric, you want to tell us a story? Like the question your dad proposed you? It was kind of a challenging question.
Can I tee it up a little bit? Because I
Tee it
think
up.
it's important for me to describe. You guys have met my dad.
Mhm.
My dad is like very much. Let me just back up. We're all here for a reason. I think like we have these conversations. Like everyone in our audience is here for a reason. They like these types of conversations. My dad is my reason. Like I grew up with this guy who likes to have these deep conversations when we hang out every time. So
For the record, the first time I met Eric's dad, we had a 5-hour conversation in his kitchen.
You guys talked in the kitchen until like 2 a.m. or something.
Correct.
So
Not exaggerating.
So he always does this type of shit. So on this particular time, I went to Jackson Hole on vacation a couple weeks ago, and we did one on one day that was about is equal opportunity policy, is that racist? I fucking won that one when the Supreme Court came afterwards. Okay, so I won that one. But the next one we had, he says this is the prompt to you guys, because man, he goes, do you have a responsibility to help people who have less than you? And this was like, mind you, morning. I'm getting my coffee at the coffee bar at the house in Jackson Hole. I'm like,
this just comes up
yeah,
randomly.
yeah. This is just how he is. He's
That's
like,
exactly how his dad is.
he's like an
This is
alfalfa.
an
This is
ass-
not a
some-
conversation I would ever have
No,
with
this
my
is
dad.
his coffee question.
this is like an alfalfa episode question that my dad always wants to have.
I mean,
when we're like,
that's cool.
it's really cool. But that's my reason for being
No,
here.
if
Is
Eric's
'cause, like,
ever like in Jackson, we should just have his dad in, honestly.
yeah.
on
So
the
this
show.
is like why I like what we do, because I've been sort of trained to have these talks. But
Yeah.
on this particular one, I want to prompt you with, is it your responsibility? But also, I want to tell you that the conversation between my dad and I ended in him saying, "Oh, so you're just an asshole."
Oh, wow.
I'd like to keep going. I want you
Ad
to catch
hominem,
us up,
baby.
if you can, on more about the conversation you had, where you answered, how you took this debate, and what questions about this are
And what
most
was your first
intriguing
response to
you.
the question?
So my immediate
Yeah.
so my immediate
Let's break
response
this
to the
down.
question was, I'm a highly analytical person. I took his question verbatim. Should you have the responsibility to take care of those who have less than you? And he was including in this question everyone on earth, meaning people in third world countries, etc. And I'm focusing on the word responsibility because my answer to him was, no, I don't have the responsibility. I might have a moral obligation personally, like as a person with compassion that wants to help others. I might have that, but I think when he's used the word responsibility, that triggered in me like a legal obligation, like written into a tax code per se. And that's the part that I balked at, and I sort of basically just said no to him. And that's when he ultimately meandered to.
You know
"You're an
that's
asshole."
not what he meant, though, right? Like, you don't think he meant are you legally obliged to help people, right?
Well, even if he did or didn't, aren't taxes essentially a mechanism for this in your mind?
Absolutely.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, because he was including everyone in the world, like I think defining
Went beyond your borders.
well, defining your tribe matters. Like, our tax system pays people within our borders, and we've defined our tribe
do
to
you
be the
agree
U.S.
that
borders.
that system exists? Because if it didn't, in a pure capitalist society, there would just be a tremendous amount of poverty. And in order to make sure that there are public goods,
Yeah.
we owe taxes.
I do agree with that. And I think there is a responsibility to pay taxes.
Wait, can we establish that your dad is Swedish?
Yeah,
I feel like that is like important context for this conversation.
If you couldn't tell, I'm half Swedish. So my dad's Swedish. Sweden is a socialist nation. He moved to the United States when he was like 4 years old, so he didn't really feel socialism.
Yeah, he's pretty American.
But he is a liberal individual on the voting spectrum for sure.
So my initial reaction would also be no, but I want to know what he implied when I say, well, so you're just an asshole. Like, what was his implication by that? And like, to what extent should you be responsible? Because he was obviously saying to some extent, but like, how far does it go?
I mean, he's also a guy who chooses his words. He said the word responsible, which I inferred to mean, like legally responsible.
You're focused on the wrong thing, though. You're focused on the responsible. You should have had him define those less fortunate. What does that mean? That you are morally obligated to help every single person on the planet Earth who is objectively
Well,
less.
he obviously doesn't mean that because that's physically impossible.
It is physically impossible, which is kind of my point. So what
but
does
of course,
he mean?
let's like give some benefit to to the question here is like he obviously just means like we should explore it in a way that makes sense. So
well, let me prompt
do
you
you-
guys. Let me prompt
it's
you
It's
guys.
not obvious what he means.
Well, let me
though,
prompt
I would
you
but
guys.
argue.
that doesn't even create a conversation. So let's
So-
create a
so
conversation.
when-
This is a conversation.
So when
what
we
do
were
you
at-
mean
no,
by
hold on.
less
When we were
responsible?
at,
less fortunate?
at the cigar lounge, and we talked about this briefly. If I recall, I said what I said. No, Armand said no, and you said yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to prompt you.
Oh, I might be a yes though.
Okay, so what did you mean, Stephen? What did
I'm
you
a
mean by
zero.
yes?
I'll see how I feel. In a
What
bit.
did you mean by yes? We are responsible to help those with less than us.
Well, I didn't like your response because it was verifiably false from the get-go, right? Because
What do you mean by that?
Like he would just have to basically prove like one instance where like of course you should help, and then like your answer is not good. No, Armand's like laughing like I'm trolling, but it's like
No, it's just the way
it's,
you said that was just so funny. It's just classic.
it's true because like he
It's just
only has to
classic.
prove like one instance where on everybody like you should be helping, like whereas like you're speaking in like absolutes, like no, I have no obligation to help those less fortunate than me. And like you're obviously, my point was that you're obviously going to lose that as like a point of contention in a debate because you've painted yourself into
Okay,
a
this
very tight
This
corner.
is why we argue so much, because I was focusing on the semantics of the word responsible, and you're focused on the semantics of this other angle.
But I already told you your focus on responsible as like a legal definition was not what most people would interpret it as, and probably not what your dad meant, right?
And probably he didn't mean what you said as well. Like, I think if we were to focus on what he actually meant, I think he was trying to assess where I'm at
Maybe
as
more the moral side.
as a moral
Yeah, how
and
do you
human
feel?
individual today with means. Where do I land on philanthropy? I think.
Precisely. And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, and I think
Was he speaking about philanthropy? Because he's from Sweden. He's probably also speaking about how much of your income should you give to the government. That's not philanthropy, right?
true, but I think he was asking a moral question, not really a legal question. To your
I want to go into the moral part
I
of
agree,
this.
which is why I was like, you shouldn't have answered it like he was asking a legal
Okay,
question.
no, stop. I want to go into a conversation about the moral part of this.
Yeah.
Do you, as a human being, have a responsibility to help others less fortunate than you?
What-
Let's move on from that conversation and have this
What
conversation.
does that mean? What do you mean by
Okay, I'll tee up something and
Yeah.
you. Okay, so what this means is that as you're living your life, in general, not just from a monetary perspective. Of course, as an individual, you only have so much money, you only have so much time, you only have so much capability. So the question that I find interesting is this. As a human being, should your eye be on this specific goal and this specific ball, which is to extract as much as you can from the world for yourself and for your family and for those immediately next to you? Or should a core component of your identity and who you are and how you spend your time also go toward helping others? Others being your society. Let's not draw a line across San Diego versus the United States versus the world. Maybe the way you like to give back is by going to El Salvador, or you go to, help Ukraine or whatever you're into. But you generally are saying, I have a moral obligation as a human being to do the best I can with what I have, to take 10 cents out of a dollar, to take 10 seconds out of a minute to help others. Or I don't, and actually the way that I serve the world the most is by benefiting myself the most, by creating the best life for myself, by creating the best life for my family. That's an interesting conversation to me.
Yeah, like when you pose that question, this visual popped in my head of kind of like a dartboard where there's like a core center, like the bullseye, which in my mind is my immediate family. So think mom, dad, brother, sister, husband, wife, children. That's your core center. That is my goal in life, is to make sure I can provide for them first. And then there's an outer circle, right? Which is maybe your business partners and closest friends. And then there might be strangers in that third outer circle, which is the people you come across in day-to-day life, like the person that you see at the coffee shop. And then it just, these circles get wider and wider and maybe less intimate. And I think your main priority, at least my main priority, is always to provide for that inner circle first. And if you can do that, which is really tough to do.
You take that very seriously, don't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's dependency involved. So you can't fail, right? So you have to provide. There's no other backup
True.
option.
If there is dependency, that changes a lot of things, like having a child.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
My God, what does that do to you?
Yeah.
In terms of
So if I were to use both your frameworks, I like both. But let's say you have a capital allocation problem. There's a limited budget to help people with time and money. So you would probably focus on the center first. And to me, that basically means just people within my experience. Why don't you just help people that are within your realm of experience? When you go esoteric, meaning people I've never met or heard of, or countries I've never been to, or whatever, that's outside of my experience, and that's too far away from the center.
And isn't there an extrapolation mathematically here where if everyone just did what you're describing, everyone would be taken care of? If we all took care of our inner circle, and ideally everyone had some sort of circle, and as you get out into the further circles, you obviously have less capital of time and money or attention or love. You give less, but you're still giving something. One example I wanted to share in this conversation was one of the ways I think we can help others is with kindness. Call me a fucking hippie. I know it's easy to make fun of that. But I believe that one of the greatest ways to help fellow man and woman is when you're walking down the street to smile.
Yeah.
To nod.
Be polite,
to open
be
a door.
cordial.
Yes.
All these
I
things.
really believe that we can shape
that makes
and
the world
benefit
better.
others and make the world a better place through these
completely
simple,
agree.
micro, fractional, momentary decisions. It is what I believe we owe each other as a sort of compliment and acknowledgement of you exist and I exist, and we exist in this brief sliver of time. We just so happen to be here at the same time. The universe was 13.7 billion years old until 2 months ago, and now it's fucking 27 billion years old, and we just so happen to be here in the sliver of infinity. And maybe that's the best I can do for you. Sometimes, if you ask for help or you put your hand out and you need a little something more, maybe in that moment, if my heart is open enough and I'd like to, and my pool of allowance allows for it, then I, based on my general personality disposition, may choose to provide more.
That is very optional the way you describe it.
It's very optional, and it's also ultimately very personal and down to the individual. We all have very different personalities.
So if you say no, you're not a bad person.
So this to
Wait,
me,
so do you disagree fundamentally with the entire social contract by which we govern ourselves? Because like our social contract is that you must do much more than smile at a person on the street, right?
What would those things be?
Well, for one thing, you've opted into a system where a portion of your income is taken and distributed to some centrally controlled body that sets up
So
public
that already
goods and
happens.
services.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you think you should be doing like you?
I
we
do.
should do that. Right?
I do think I owe that. I do think I owe the taxes. I do think I owe to make sure I have a road to drive on. I want that road. I benefit from that road, and so does my fellow man. I believe in what Einstein said, that all of my life is built on the foundations of the men and women that came before me and all of their accomplishments and all of the things that the government provides for me. Einstein would not be able to come up with his theories if it were not for the society and the comforts that he lives in, and neither would any of us.
right? Imagine
So
if
we
he had to
need
like
these things.
fight with like a
Yes.
spear. You know, like
Yes.
Einstein wouldn't come up with theory of
He would
relativity.
never, ever have been able to. So I do believe that we need those.
But
things
need
that we
what
owe
though?
those
'Cause
things.
it's still kind of like overbroad. Like, what do I have the right to kind of
I
forcibly
think you're
take money from you
interested in
for?
that, so go into it. Like you're
Yeah.
interested in
I don't
this.
know.
Like,
I
what
just
we
feel
owe.
like people speak about this topic in like platitudes, and they do it to like gain like virtue points sometimes, and they don't
Are
say
you calling
anything
me a
that's
virtue
like.
signaler?
No,
No.
I think I think
I'm
he's
joking.
accurately calling my dad this
I'm
this
joking.
virtue point getter because that's how I
and-
felt.
And like I kind of feel like that with the Swedes, sorry,
Yeah.
and like a lot of the Europeans, like I think they have like a naive view of how the world works, and they're operating in like a very short time frame of history. And like the Swedes, especially, I think 2
think you're
decades
right.
from now, like there was an article that came out like a couple days ago talking about how like the GDP of Europe relative to the US is like halved or something over the rate of change since like in the last 10 years. And then like Europeans are like, oh, what the hell is going on? Like as though like it's like a big surprise that you can't just kind of work 4 hours a day and, you know, take siestas and like magically productivity happens and everybody has enough money to survive. And there's like, you can give infinite social programs. Like there's a disconnect from reality from my perspective as an American. Feel free to throw shade at me.
I got dragged on
Europeans.
Instagram for saying those same words about Finland.
But like
Yeah.
there is this sort of balance we have to have between idealism and reality. And I think it's the reason we have these two kind of call them political parties or way of thought that people have. Like I think there is a balance there that we need to achieve. But like the idea that like you can help everybody is obviously silly. Like there's a finite amount that you can do for the rest of the world. Most of what you're doing, when people talk about helping, they're not actually talking about you doing anything. They're talking about somebody taking money from you and distributing it to some like conservatives and liberals like tend to have like these very wildly different views on like social safety nets and such, right? But if you look at it, like statistically in principle, you know who donates more money to charity? Like conservatives do. Conservatives belong to like, you know, religious groups, and they sort of believe in this sort of what like Armand was talking about, where you help your tribe. Like the help comes at the local level, and you do that, and you do it with like your own actions, or you do it with your money, but in a very directed way, versus like I'm helping because I'm taking your money and I'm giving it to the government, and we're making some bureaucracy that's going to, you know, honestly probably light most of the money on fire, right? So
Yeah,
it's not
it's-
enough to just be like, I'm a good person because I'm taking money from you
Right.
and giving it to the
Government
that's
is
not
a
enough.
inefficient transfer of wealth.
What we have, you mentioned two prongs. Like we have subscribed to a system that has a centralized method and a decentralized method. The centralized method is the taxes going to the government, and that government distributes it. The other is nonprofits, and I think it's actually a relatively more efficient method to distribute that money if you so choose. You know, government, we can argue pretty safely, is like an inefficient way, but like most times nonprofits have to produce how many cents on the dollar go to programs may actually go to what you're trying to solve. And like, you know, anything above 90% is pretty exceptional. So you're saying that like 90 cents of the dollar that you contribute to a nonprofit goes to
I think
actually
you'd
helping
acknowledge
people.
this, that unfortunately there's a lot of nonprofits where if 10 cents of a dollar even makes it to the cause.
Totally, you can argue that
there are sites that will rank the health of a nonprofit for that reason, because many of them are dysfunctional in that way.
Yeah, I think you argue like their absolute efficiency, but it's definitely, I think it's more efficient than the
more
government.
efficient.
Yeah, but I like that there is this decentralized method. So you choose your tribe. Like you said, you could choose your tribe in different ways. And like however you choose, you can direct that money if you decide to. Like I didn't mention charities in any of my 3 first circles. I've donated to charities in the past, but like looking back, I'm like, I have a priority in my life that I have to like meet. And so should I be donating to charities even though I'm like maybe financially above average? I don't think I should, because like first order of business is like secure the family and then secure like business partners and friends.
It's
and
a
then,
waterfall, right?
Yeah, it is a waterfall. And a lot of people in the chat have mentioned
It's just like an investment
it
waterfall.
depends on your degree of how much wealth you have to distribute.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people, their waterfall's kind of broken, where they're like, I have to first fill a bucket to a certain degree before I can do that, instead of saying, I have a ratio. 5%.
But it's much easier for
Of
someone
every dollar,
with immense,
whatever it
like
is.
if you have immense
It is
wealth,
much
you can
easier.
go with a
Much
higher
easier.
percentage. Like it's almost like you don't even feel
Well, it
it.
doesn't even matter if it's a higher percentage. The absolute value is just higher. So it just
But I think the
makes a
percentage
dent.
does matter, because like somebody who's poor, it might hurt them to give 5% of their income versus
does.
somebody who has a ton of money
You're right.
could give 40% of their income, and it's like I don't even feel it.
And in that regard, I would agree if you would say it doesn't make sense for someone who's below average means to give 10% of every dollar back. I would agree. It's not necessary, but if they'd like to, they can.
I find the whole question very interesting, because I think what it implies is like do you have the responsibility to help those who have less than you? What it implies
Right.
is that in a perfect world, again, equal distribution of outcomes, right? Because if you play that out, where everyone who had, bigger means gave to people who have lesser means, then you would essentially come out to like an equal scale. And like, I just don't believe that's possible.
I
I don't
agree.
believe that's how the world works. It doesn't match with how I see reality.
And I think that is basically what I'm saying, and I'm focusing on the word responsibility to illustrate that exact ideology. But like I think where I'm actually at is like I do try to help people all the time.
Right.
And I want to help people where I can. But I don't think that it should just be like baked into my protocol at a certain
So you're not a bad
Yeah.
person.
well,
There's another way to think about this whole thing. What I was kind of alluding to earlier is like, you could just look at it in this like basic fundamental way of everything I have, a certain percentage of my time or money should be allocated toward others that have less than me, and that'd be just like a good virtue. But another way to approach that problem is to say, I serve others more to my maximum capability by simply attempting to do the most that I can do in this life, to be as generative towards society as I can be. Like me creating a startup and producing jobs or generating impact
I'm glad you
or
said that.
teaching or whatever it might be could actually be exponentially more impactful than me spending 10 minutes with somebody or spending $10 with somebody to help them in their specific situation. I'm not saying that's exactly how I feel. I'm just like exploring that topic, that there is a really interesting math to look at here, where I could imagine where if everyone just did what they do best and cared about supporting the things that are truest to them, like say your mom goes through a certain type of illness, and you decide to give back to that foundation that supports that illness. Some might say, like, why do you only want to give to that foundation that supports Alzheimer's? Shouldn't you give to these other ones? But I genuinely feel pulled and called, and I feel like good about being and doing that. And the math says that the distribution of outcomes and what happens in society, we're all going through things. If we all just support the things we care about, actually, we raise everything up.
So can
And
I,
I
Is
and I
that
think
can I
that
ask you a
there's
question?
Is that like Ayn Randian?
Oh
There-
my
there-
God, this is
extended-
exactly where I was going.
Yeah. So
my question was, does your personal greed actually perfectly align
With-
providing to the greater good?
it's a beautiful question, and there are volumes of books about this topic. So what do you think?
I mean, Ayn Rand says that like selfish is good. If in fact every individual act in a selfish way, like things would play out. And obviously the way I stated that, just kind of like this sounds like there's tons of holes in that argument, but that's essentially
Does like
her, like the Ayn Rand Institute,
So
that's
y-
what they subscribe to.
I think like I want to just focus on that quote you just dropped, which is like if everyone just focuses on their self-interest, like because your self-interest can include helping others. That could be an interest of yours. Like
Oh, yeah.
because like you
the
guys go
thing
to
your family
Tony
went through.
Robbins or something, and Tony Robbins includes in his like hierarchy like serving or
Contribution.
But he makes
contribution.
millions of dollars off us, Eric.
Yeah.
But I mean, I
off his contribution.
but you've gotten immense personal gratitude by giving back.
Yes.
So I think that can also be a part of the Ayn Rand.
I mean,
Ideology.
I like strongly disagree.
Yeah,
with Ayn Rand.
this is what we've been waiting for
Strongly?
because this is where you came from.
Can
And
you
the cigar
semi-strong?
lounge.
If you're going to be strong,
No.
you better bring the ruckus. This,
Like-
this better be good.
Like, well, Ayn Rand is people do this thing where they have this philosophy, and it's sort of like directionally correct in the sense that yes, capitalism, greed, the free market is directionally good and the sort of benefits that it produces for humanity, but it does not follow logically that unfettered greed and pursuit of one's own selfish desires will result in the maximum amount of like societal good. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? And I believe it's stupid and futile to like try to help literally everybody on earth. Like that obviously doesn't work in terms of your finite resources, money, time, whatever. I also don't think the, quote unquote conservative model works where everybody takes care of their tribe, because like a lot of people don't have tribes, and if you want to live in a society, like it is a perfectly acceptable question to ask. Like, okay, like how much do we want somebody to come in and provide something outside the tribe? I think that's what kind of like Adam in the chat was getting about with like healthcare. Like obviously we can't give everybody in the country healthcare by just having people donate locally. Like that obviously wouldn't work. But it's also true in the opposite direction that you can't just confiscate everybody's money and give it to some government entity that runs all of the, goodwill stuff, and that everything is self. That's also stupid, but it's stupid in the opposite direction that the Ayn Rand stuff is stupid, I guess.
So you like the combination of decentralized and centralized?
Yeah, we need both
currently
of
live in.
those things. Like this is how I feel about like we didn't talk about this a lot in the education conversation, but this is how I feel about like education as well. Like I think the education system would be better in the vast majority of the country if the government just got the fuck out of the way and didn't run any of the schools. But before we had public education, there was definitely a need for the government to create some schools. And to this day, there are still many areas of the country where the government needs to provide schooling because the market isn't going to do that. And like, I think it is important in society for government to kind of step in where the market won't. But like here in San Diego, right? Like I don't think there's any need for public schools in San Diego. Like I think most of California in general, I think if you just had like a voucher system and you're like, hey, free market, you make the schools, the government will be the piggy bank. It's kind of what the government's doing anyway, except now the government can be the piggy bank, but they don't have to run the damn shit, which they're terrible at, right? So you can kind of balance those two things out. But I don't think that you should live in some rural area and you're just, sorry, you don't get a school. Like that's not good either. Like this is like a tricky and nuanced thing, which is why I don't like Ayn Rand. It's not nuanced. It doesn't make any sense.
I had a chance to hear this guy named Yaron Brook. He was like at the time like CEO of the Ayn Rand Institute, and he wrote a book called "Equal is Unfair." And what Ayn Rand talks about on one end of the spectrum is if everyone is selfish, everything will work out. And in his little talk, he gave the complete extreme example, which is where you give everyone equal income. Is that fair? And he says no. And he uses maybe a UBI type example. Especially in California, if you have Native American descent, like Stephen, purportedly, yeah, and Elizabeth Warren, you get income regardless of whether you work or not. And he used that.
Don't you have to live on the reservation?
Yes. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if it is either.
I would like to remind the audience that I am approximately 130 times more Native American than Elizabeth Warren is.
Okay, noted. Noted for the audience.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, buddy.
But he talks about that in those scenarios where you give equal income, like things don't always work out. Like you have high rates of crime, high rates or low rates of education. They don't necessarily get jobs. Like, I don't know. Like, I think you're right.
So you're saying help isn't just giving people money?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Totally agree. Which is why, like, the opposite of that, like, it also follows that helping isn't just taking money from people as well. I mean, you have to do that to a degree.
I think help is just giving people mobility. Allowing you to achieve what you would like to achieve in an equitable way, but still maintaining like true qualification standards. Like nobody wants to just be handed
Can I ask you something?
their like ideal outcome without earning it. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, some people do.
No, they think they want
They
it.
think they do.
They think they
Yes.
want it.
Would you be okay if some of U.S. tax income went to help others in third world countries?
Bro, our whole budget is completely backwards and broken already.
There is a budget for
if
that.
it was already like dialed in and we were taking a piece of the budget that didn't make sense and allocating it to that because we as a nation felt that that was a moral good, I could see that as the most powerful nation on earth. Yes, as the richest nation on earth. Sure, I could see that. But there are so many ways that we're already doing that. It's just not that category line item on the P&L.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's
It's
like
just there already.
money allocated for transgender students in Afghanistan.
I wouldn't be
So like
surprised either.
there is like some allocation. You know, Marty brings up a good point. He's like, I'm cool with taxes for medications and roads and infrastructures, but not sure for war, Ukraine. Agree they need base stuffs and too bad it's all abused. Like maybe he's saying like, but beyond that, like what else should the government provide and anything beyond that? Like maybe I should keep the money and decide for myself. You know,
Okay, well, I mean, do you guys agree with this, that the more that we rely on the government to provide things, that the more that we as a society sort of atrophy in our ability or desire to provide those things, via
Yes.
philanthropy or just doing things that we're supposed to do? Because that's kind of what I feel
I agree with
happens, and that's not a good thing. I feel like what Armand said earlier was sort of I like mostly agree with. I think it's like 1 degree off. Like I think that you are obligated. The world would be better if everybody helped their circle, right? But that's also what we did before, and it's not positive sum for everybody. Like some circles continue to get richer, some circles continue to get poorer. But I think if you have like a circle, however you want to define that, and you say like, okay, your obligation is to help your circle, and then go 1 degree outside your circle and like help them. And then like, what if
Isn't that just your
everybody
taxes?
just went? No.
okay.
No,
it's
I-
like your
I think that's like
extended
a cop-out.
family, and then
Okay.
you're
It's a cop out, I think.
Yeah.
Like I think if everybody like consciously goes 1
Consciously
degree
is the right
outside
word.
that circle of whatever it is, family or whatever, however you define your tribe, and just go like 1 degree further and help. You have a bunch of these circles just going like 1 degree outside. Like that seems positive sum. That seems like it would create like a ripple in a way. And
Question:
that would
can
help
I
everybody.
frequent the same restaurant because like I want to help that restaurant out? Is that I'm a customer? I'm getting something in value in exchange, but does that count as like helping?
It depends on whether you're like a student of effective altruism, I think.
Oh,
Because
God.
like that's like I think that's like an interesting thing. It ties into something you were saying earlier. Like, because you can make the sort of argument that like, well, I know I'm not helping anybody now, but I'm 24. My time is better spent acquiring all these resources because my economic growth will compound. And then when I'm 70 and I'm basically Bill Gates, I will be able to just rain upon the world like all of this stuff that will help everybody. And like you can kind of make this economic argument that it's actually better to do nothing earlier in the name of growing your stash per se, because then you can do better things with the stash later. What do you think about that?
I think still not an asshole. Like still not an asshole if you choose that's your path.
I know
I
the
mean, it's
restaurants you
logical
go
in a
to,
way.
and those guys don't need help, dude.
I don't think any of these things that we've discussed are asshole paths. I think the only asshole path, the traditional conversation around this topic, by the way, can we just what a breath of fresh air to be able to talk about this topic without it just being the typical liberal versus conservative argument. The liberal is like, you must give. The conservative is like, take care of yourself. And then that's where the conversation ends. The way that you help society most is like, don't pay tax, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, be productive. And the other one is like, no, we all deserve equality, and that's the end of the conversation. And it's just crazy that my lifetime has been spent only hearing that conversation. So yeah, I think we've gone much further than that conversation. And I think that there's no assholes. The only asshole really is the person who, when we say the word self-serving, we mean truly the word self in a very individual sense. Even the way that we've described self-serving today is like serving the self and the environment around the self, which I think is really fair. But self-serving is like, just call it like a form of like deep narcissism, where you only are concerned with serving the self and what's good for the self and how like it all ends there. It's just a circle that just it all ends there. So I don't think anyone's discussed anything like that. And I think that ultimately we're debating things that can be analyzed from an economic perspective, but also from a philosophical perspective of what's right. Ayn Rand coming up, and all of that is very philosophical too. I guess my question for you guys is, philosophically, what do you believe is the right path? What do you believe is correct? What is not the utilitarian approach, because that is a philosophy in and of itself, but what is your philosophy of how the world should look in this regard? Maybe Eric, because you started this.
Yeah, I think it's been an enlightening discussion for me. I'm probably going to share this episode with my dad, but I think like where I land is basically what we talked about. Like I like that there's this centralized and decentralized method where you can kind of hit it from two angles, and I think that covers more of the bases.
Yeah, I'm still on my like concentric circles, or not concentric circles. Sorry, like you
what do you call those?
I don't know, bullseyes.
Yeah, bullseyes. There it is.
Yeah, I want to focus on my immediate family first, and then kind of like expand outwards. And if fortune allows me to go outside those, then I will, but not beyond like. And I'm not even talking about the needs. Like, if my family wants something that's like beyond the average, like I should probably give it to them first before maybe even providing like a basic need for someone I don't know. Like that's my like inclination. I don't know if that makes me an asshole, but like I feel like a much bigger responsibility for that than
buy something for your wife or your daughter before you buy some random something. Like probably.
Yeah. Definitely.
My mom wants $900 shoes. It's like, well, shit. Okay.
Those are good shoes.
Hopefully they're good shoes, but like I gotta
they're
work
not
harder.
Good shoes. They're good. They're a good brand.
Yeah.
That
I don't know.
Garnered $900.
She never wants $900 shoes. I'm just
yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. What do you think, Steven?
I don't know.
You've explored a lot of philosophies here and a lot of different motives and a lot of different outcomes of the way things should look. I mean, do you personally have a grasp on how things should be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like an exact formula, but there's like sort of an algorithm. You have these like circles around you, like, an inner circle with your family or people who are very close to you. You have like medium circles with your friends, and like slightly wider circles maybe with your countrymen or other sort of various tribes, and then you have just random people on earth at like the farthest like reaches to that. And I don't know the exact formula, but I think in the innermost circles you have like very strict moral obligations to help them, no matter what the cost of like your own personal utility, and no matter the cost of what that debit of your personal utility means to the people outside of your circle later in terms of like what you could have given them, like if you just ignored that, right? But then I think once you get outside a particular circle, it is kind of purely utilitarian, right? Like I think if you go to the farthest circle and you're like, oh, I want to help, I think the sort of Bill Gates kind of mentality where it's just like, oh, what is the most effective use of $1? Maybe it's to cure malaria with mosquito. Like that thinking is fine, but that thinking is like not at all good in the inner circle. So it's kind of like a blend and a difficult balance of those two things. But I think, yeah, you start with like a very super moral obligation in the inner, and then it kind of fades to a more utilitarian thing as you kind of go out. Hopefully that makes sense.
Armand, any final thoughts?
I think it's not exactly to the question, but like I do believe in the idea of being a good person. Like I actually think that's a real thing. I know some people today don't agree with that. I know some people today that are just so lost in the sauce of subjectivity that like all regard for any construct of how to function and behave in society has become lost. But I absolutely believe in an objective moral good. I think that like if we're saying, is there such thing as good and bad or good and evil? Like in many ways you could argue no. From a universal truth perspective, it's just life. But when it comes to like my actions and the impact that those actions have on others, I do believe there's absolutely an objective good or bad that can take place as the result of an action I take. You can call that karma. You can call that whatever you want. I mean, I don't have a backing, a deeper idea to it other than I think everyone knows it in their gut and in their heart even, that what they're doing is better for other people or not. And I think that if you choose to take more good actions than bad actions, whether or not it makes the world a better place or not is not what's important. It's actually how it leaves you feeling, because this is it. Like, this is it. This is it. This is life. So, like, do you want to feel like shit while you're here and be filled with like envy and greed and regret and just nasty guilt? Or do you want to be left feeling really good that you actually left the world a better place than you found it? And I prefer that path, like no question. So do I think we have a responsibility to help others? Like, yes, but broadly speaking, in the ways that we described today. It depends.
With a ton of nuance.
Yeah, with a ton of nuance. Yeah.
I like your little philosophical wrap-ups. They're good. Make me feel good inside after. Like wrap everything in a nice little tight bow. If you guys were listening and, I don't know, wanted to yell something at us or thought we were missing something completely, I'm pretty sure that the group in the chat probably filled that gap. So I recommend, if you can, join us in the live stream or just watch it on YouTube, because the chat was probably a lot smarter than us and a lot more insightful us at times. So
Chat was asking good questions tonight.
Yeah, there was a lot
today.
I know Adam in the chat. There were a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah,
I
Marty,
wish we could have
Pat,
commented on all of it.
Max. Yeah, there were whole calcium, of course. Tunskirlon, Kevin. Yeah. Anyway, appreciate you guys joining the chat and contributing.
Did you do your donation rant yet?
My donation.
You did at the
I
beginning.
You did?
I did at the beginning.
Good. I'm just
Yeah.
a terrible listener.
That's okay.
Okay.
You're here to be a star, not a listener.
Wow.
Steven the Star.
I'm
The
just
thighs.
blinded by your flattery.
Well, anyway, guys, thank you for joining us. I think this was a fun
The sun
conversation.
on Steven's legs. Jordan.
Yeah, they're really
Great call. I
highlighting.
was just looking at the same thing, Jordan. I was literally just looking at that.
All the links are in the YouTube description. Thank you guys for joining us. Peace out.
Later,
Love you lots.
guys.
Love